Welcome to this week's episode of Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters, a podcast where we explore the cinematic legacy of the classic monsters. I'm John Campbell. With me, as always, Brendan Jones.
But am I with you, John? That's always the question. For the folks at home, technical difficulties. This is our 15th attempt to start this podcast.
It's like shooting a Kubrick movie here today.
I don't think I have the energy to keep doing it at this point.
He made Jack Nicholson get out of that car and walk to the hotel like 80 times. So.
I can't wait to see how badly you treat Shelley Duvall. Anyway, so yes, I am with you as always. And today we're talking about maybe one of the finest films. I'm not going to even say
I want this on the record that you
films.
Insisted on talking about these movies. These were not originally on the list of Hammer movies. You were the one who said, let's do the sexy ones.
I think they are necessary. Well, actually, I do think, even though this isn't tied into Bram Stoker's creation, this does have a literary basis of another classic vampire tale, which I talk a little bit about in my little intro. But so it's valid, and I know it's definitely a cliche, but you can't think of Hammer without thinking of this type of film.
Yes.
If not this one specifically.
No, I do think that I think a lot of people might be surprised at the restraint shown in the previous movies, expecting all of these movies almost from the start to be like this.
Right. You know, when you're starting in 1959 and then that's what we were saying
movie
early
would have been
on.
Pretty fucking shocking in 1959.
1959, this thing would have been burned. It never would have been distributed.
No.
We're watching truly, I mean, through genre and cheap filmmaking, but we are watching the sea change in filmmaking, not just American, but worldwide, where, yes, we're coming out of the 60s and into the 70s, and there's a new permissiveness in film. So it isn't just here in the vampire movies, all across movies. Suddenly we've got a lot more nudity because that's now a sign of we are breaking the old ways.
That's
and we're
right.
being rebels and we're showing boo. We're tackling important themes. Look, there's drug use on screen and and it was important. But at the same time, of course, was also just another way to sell tickets because it was like scandalous. But yeah, what are you gonna do? So yeah, I remember seeing these on TV as a kid, along with all the other Christopher Lee vampire films and so forth. And of course, crazy censored, edited for American TV releases. Mm-hmm. But they still lodged in my mind because I was just in love with all vampire films. And I will go on the record here saying I have no problem with attractive young ladies.
I have a few issues with attractive. No, I have a few problems here with the.
But you're going to just detail that on our Discord.
Yes.
The fan club. Mm-hmm. You'll be just writing about it there.
You'll be hearing all my thoughts.
Your blog.
Yeah.
I get that they're attractive, sure.
I understand.
But what are they doing in a movie?
Leave the women out of movies.
But, again, it's also strangely like we're seeing the adolescence of horror film as well, because from the very restrained 1930s to this point, we've seen an interesting progression in.
Definitely.
There was the implied sensuality, especially of a vampire, not so much the Frankenstein monster, but, it was like vampires have that built in, and it was so coded and hidden from view in those early movies, and now they're like going, no, now we're just showing you that it's not just a predatory feeding urge, it's also clearly a sexual or sensual one as well. So yeah, this is one of those movies that just goes, you know what, screw subtext, text.
I was, this really made me, when I was watching this, I was definitely thinking about Dracula's Daughter, right? When it was exactly. I guess that movie has some lesbian undertones if you want to look for them. Whereas this movie is just like, do you get it? Lesbians!
Sure, she'll bite a male neck if she has to.
Yeah, she's not happy about it though.
She's not happy about it. That's not the way she swings.
One of my favorite factoids from the making of that's on this Blu-ray is that Ingrid Pitt says, "I never saw anything sexual about this movie."
Oh, okay. Well, that's her.
She was like, lesbian? I don't. No, I never. I don't. She's like, I never thought of this character as sexual in any way. And I'm just like,
well, I will say
I don't
that.
know.
Yeah, I know that. That's hard to believe. I will say that one of the reasons that, and we will watch the other two,
Yes.
and they get worse.
Oh yes,
but this much worse. But this one, at the very least, is suggesting, and there is some subtlety in Ingrid Pitt's performance, to where she uses what she has to get what she wants. But at the core of her character, and maybe that's why she thinks of this not being sexual, you can tell that she is looking for a companion forever. So like her forever girlfriend. So she's actually weirdly a romantic character. The main victims that she pursues are women that she wants to be with her forever, and it is more romantic. The people that she uses as thralls, she's definitely just seducing them sexually and doesn't care about them in the least.
She's not into that butler? Come on.
Oh, Renton. He is a fine piece of British butlery.
Couldn't take my eyes off of him.
A fine piece of butlery. I think that's a first for me.
Topless women were comforted. I was like, get back to Renton.
Put your clothes on and get back to Renton.
But if Renton wants to lose his top, I'm okay with it.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So let me do a little bit of my little behind the scenes tale.
Yes.
Before we jump into the movie, we have plenty to discuss, and also one of the craziest posters I've seen in a long time, but we're not there yet.
Oh my God.
I know. So I'll just start. I'll go way back to the very beginning. In 1872, that's how far back I'm going. 26 years before Bram Stoker would pen Dracula, another Irish author, Sheridan Le Fanu, and I know when I was like, wait a minute, I've known this guy's name for a long time. Never knew he was Irish. Le Fanu, I'm like, oh, isn't he French? But apparently Irish. Wrote a serialized novella entitled Carmilla. While not attaining the same immortality as Stoker's novel, Carmilla was successful and is often heralded as one of the finest and most influential Gothic suspense tales and a classic of vampire literature. Plus, it pretty much is the origin of the lesbian vampire trope, so we have a lot to thank Le Fanu for. Now, the angle, as we're discussing before, of same-sex attraction vampirism seemed fresh and titillating to producers Harry Fine and Michael Stile, who sold the pitch to Hammer chief Jimmy Carreras based on this concept and the title The Vampire Lovers alone. Literally, Jimmy Carreras just had to hear lesbian vampires, movie called Vampire Lovers, and he was like, we're doing it!
He's knocking stuff over his desk to get to his phone quick enough to, like, come on, let's do it!
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Hammer had been looking to new trends in horror films at the time and were feeling the pressure of American distributors to ramp up the more exploitative aspects of their movies. So this was like, yeah, that's the next step. So this time around, they balanced the atmospheric bloodletting with a whole lot more exposed female flesh and found a willing buyer and banker in American International Pictures. AIP, home of Samuel Z. Arkoff and the infamous Roger Corman.
Yes.
Hammer and AIP together. Whoof. The Vampire Lovers was the first and the last time these two legendary companies would share a production. It seemed like a natural fit. It's like, wow, of course Corman was like, yeah, bring this thing in. But yeah, there was internal stuff that they did not get along. And so the two companies parted ways after one movie. However, even though they split, The Vampire Lovers was in fact a big hit, undeniably, and a lot of its success was due to its cast of beautiful actresses, headed by a newcomer to Hammer who, even though she only made 2 films for the company, quickly became a cult figure forever tied to the company's legacy, and that would be Ingrid Pitt. Ingrid Pitt, born Ingushka Petrov in 1937. She and her family of Polish-German Jews were imprisoned in a concentration camp during the war. She spent her childhood in a concentration camp. After the war, she actually ended up marrying an American soldier, which is where she got the Pitt last name, moved to California, had a daughter, got divorced, hung out with Native Americans in Colorado, moved back to Europe, decided to become an actress, got some bit parts, moved to Hollywood, and worked as a waitress, got some more bit parts, and eventually, as Ingrid Pitt, having now changed her name to that, she started to get noticed, appearing in small but memorable parts in films like Where Eagles Dare with Richard Burton and Clint Eastwood.
I was just watching that the other week.
It's a fine film. It's a lot of fun.
Really
it's a good
enjoyable
war
movie.
picture.
Yeah.
A brilliant and inquisitive mind also led her to writing, which bolstered her through her sporadic acting career. At the time of her death in 2010, she had written 12 books, ranging from children's books to historical fiction to horror compilations to autobiography. And really, she had a life. She had a life. So I am very tempted to get that autobiography. So while not the finest actress perhaps we've covered here on the podcast, Ingrid is a true icon of cult cinema, and I salute her on behalf of horror film fans worldwide, and I will do it in the traditional hee-haw fashion, which I grew up watching as a child. Salute! And I apologize to any of you who did not grow up below the Mason-Dixon line, who are now very confused. Anyway,
I'm aware of hee-haw, so ends my relationship with it.
Which is pretty amazing, again, for a person of your age, because it was long off the air and was a cult thing anyway. So good on you for even knowing
in
that.
Things that I've liked enough, certainly.
Yeah, well, we did a little bit, talked a little bit about that at one of our Tesla City story shows.
Yes.
But anywho, yeah, so this movie, we've got some stuff to talk about, but yeah, this is our introduction to Ingrid Pitt and also Madeline Smith. So,
well, technically not. We saw Madeline Smith last week.
That's right.
Yeah,
not our introduction, but this time she talked.
Yes. We have to talk about this poster, though.
Mm-hmm.
My God, this poster. Number one,
It's
right off the bat, it has absolutely nothing to do with this movie.
No. You know what it does have? That is something that you and you are famous. You've gone on the record many a time on this podcast. You hate pretty much any poster that does not have a semi-nude man chained to a wall.
Yes, you've been in my apartment. You know the art I have up around.
This one's got you covered, man.
I was appreciative of that. I don't know. They must have drawn this before the movie was made. Even this has nothing to do with any. I mean, I really can't state how much this isn't a scene from the movie. It doesn't. This looks like a medieval film to begin with.
This is for those not looking at it. It is probably pastel or Conti crayon drawing of a torture chamber, which does look very medieval, and a line, not just the one guy, a line of victims, all of whom have been stripped to the waist, even the ladies, but they're carefully shadowed.
Yes.
Men and women chained to a wall. They're victims. They're going, no, please don't come at me, bro. But there is also a line. A conga line of vampire ladies.
I love the parade of vampire ladies.
They're ridiculous. They're on multicolored diaphanous nightgowns. They all have their hands lifted in a creepy, I'm a vampire.
And they all have sort of a grayish, bloodless skin.
Right. And they are coming at the victims on the wall.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite little details, no, there's two. I got to bring up two. Underneath the main vampire lady, who's
that's what I was going to bring up, but yes, go for it.
Almost at the throat of the chained up dude, but on the ground behind her is just a spare mace.
Yep.
It's just a mace on the ground.
I don't know who was using that mace, what purpose it had in here, but it's there. Well, somebody just left it.
Clearly, Prince Khufu, also known as Hawkman, had apparently been there. It's famously one of his weapons. And then then on then on the far right hand side,
Okay.
which is composed of, I guess, part of the wall of this dungeon, there's a human skull.
Yes, this is you mentioned the two things I would have mentioned too. Yes.
The human skull is not attached to the rest of a skeleton body. It is not chained to anything. In fact, the only way it is suspended above the ground and against this brick wall is by a single spider web at the top of its head.
Yes. And it's almost like the skull is going like, ooh, this'll be good.
Yeah, it's a spectator. Oh boy, here comes the conga line of vampire ladies.
And I do it looks like they're all lined up to go after this man. Nobody else seems to be moving towards the other chained up victims.
Yeah, they all seem to be pointing in the same, as if it's like, okay, we'll do number one first. Then we'll all move down the line, maybe. This illustration is just bonkers, and as you say, has nothing to do with this film.
No, not at all. Nobody's chained up.
John, I will need you to talk about the text that's on it.
Oh my God! Well, I mean, right off the bat, it's "If you dare," underlined with an ellipses. Taste the deadly passion of the blood nymphs.
Wow.
Okay. But my favorite piece of text on this is a little warning sign right next to the title of the movie, which says, "Caution, not for the mentally immature."
Which is why our friend, who you would think would be the biggest fan of this movie, he was actually never allowed to see it.
Oh, sorry, can't go. Can't go. Never mind. Honey, turn the car around.
I heard about this movie. It's got these naked vampire ladies and they do stuff on the screen.
Yeah.
But apparently it is not for the mentally immature.
Can I just confirm, is that true? It is not for the mentally immature. Oh, okay, damn.
I have been paid. I have the money for a ticket, but I am concerned about this warning.
Yes. I was very excited about seeing Peter Cushing as the general.
Yeah. This guy would have been heartbroken if he had not been able to see the Vampire Lovers,
because
they finally listened to him, and he had been sending them letters going, "You should do a movie where you get to see those boobs, and it's just ladies liking other ladies." And they said, "Well, that's an intriguing idea. I say, I got a most intriguing letter from a Yank, and this gentleman says that we should have nude women in our vampire film."
Do you think people would enjoy that?
This gentleman certainly would, and he's responsible for almost a third of our total box office. He has seen all of our films multiple times.
Well, then
I feel as if I owe him something.
I guess we have no choice then.
He's even gone to other countries to watch our films and boosted their box office.
Wow! Oh, this must explain that spike in Australian ticket sales.
That's the one. That's the gentleman.
He solely is the reason for it.
So I say, throw the man a bone, and let's do a nude vampire woman film.
All right, we'll take a chance on it. Yes, I do.
I say, no one else would be into this, surely.
No chance. Yes, I do like Ann Peter Cushing as the general, which is almost like his beloved character of the general.
And that's really sad because the general actually does have a last name. They talk about him in the film. So I'm like, can we just give him his full name on the poster? Because as the general, I mean, that's
or you could just leave it as Ann Peter Cushing and call it a day. But and I also love something I love in old movies are movie guest stars.
Yeah,
this film is guest starring Don Adams,
and
not that Don Adams though.
Yeah, Don.
Yeah,
Don Adams shows. I'm like, I happen to be on vacation here, and I'm wondering what's going on.
Would you believe a group of lesbian vampire women?
Would you believe one bi-curious vampire woman? No? Anyway, yes, Dawn Adams, who had credits and was known, but it seems weird to single her out. Her part's not a huge part.
Yeah, normally when I think of guest stars, I'm thinking about like guest starring Jimmy Stewart or something, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, maybe they, knew that a lot of the names up on this,
John Wayne's guest starring in The Greatest Story Ever Told, you know.
Yeah. When you're saying Ingrid Pitt, George Cole, and Kate O'Mara, it's like, okay, we better put Cushing on there and maybe someone else someone's heard of.
Cushing should be guest starring.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
he's not a huge part
bordering on a cameo in this movie. He's slightly more than a cameo here. And I was duped.
Yeah, I know.
I wanted more Cushing, but when he's there, he rules.
He's great. That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
Even in this thing, he shows up, and he's all business.
All business. And you want to talk about appealing on film? Cushing in a military uniform? Hello.
I know.
He cuts a really, dashing figure in that military coat.
All I can say, save it for Peter Cushing, because we haven't launched that podcast yet. But yeah, it is true. He looks dashing as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, even in this movie where he's not the know-it-all, he's not the guy who's
it was weird to watch at the end of this movie as other people were explaining vampires to him. I'm like, no, this is all wrong.
Yep, but still, he's the guy who steps up, is like, no, my daughter died, so I'm taking care of this thing.
Contractually, I have to stab this vampire.
Sadly, we return to the days of, I don't know where our heart is.
I'm starting to think that's specifically a Cushing thing now.
Maybe it is. I don't care how much of an angle it looked like he was about to drive that thing in. We'll talk about it. We're not there yet.
Yeah, this is we'll get to it. It's borderline a gut stab though here.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, let's open this. Oh well, first I got to talk about these taglines though, because there's a number of them for this movie. Now I got to get back to it because I did have a picture of Peter Cushing in his military uniform up on my screen.
Look, just make it your backdrop already. Just put that on your lock screen on your phone.
Yeah. Oh yes. Long before the days of not that long before the days of Grand Moff Tarkin, he wore a military uniform and something else. Okay, here there's a number of taglines for this one.
A lot of them.
She's the new horror from Hammer.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Beautiful temptress, ... or bloodthirsty monster.
And you know what? Even at the end of the film, I'm not entirely sure.
That's why we need sequels. A bloodstained tale of terror and torture. See,
there's not really any torture.
No, once again, what are they trying to sell? That poster, that tagline? What do they think this movie is?
No one watched it except for us.
I like this one. It's very, very romantic. Even the lifeless can love. Even the dead can desire.
That one's pretty good.
Yeah? I mean, I will say that one actually works for this movie.
Yes, it fits the tone of the film much better.
A tale of unholy bloodlust. And then immediately there's the opposite. If you dare taste the deadly passion of the blood nymphs, we talked about that one.
Yeah.
An erotic nightmare of tormented lusts that throb in headless undead bodies.
This is so weird. Again, it's just they watch the first 5 minutes like going, I guess the vampires don't have heads. Okay.
And then my favorite one is the last one, which is Carmilla is really queen of lesbian vampires.
I love that one so much, and I can only assume that is like from a re-release because they would not be giving that away. Especially, they wouldn't even put the word lesbian on a movie poster back in 1970. So, but I love it. Carmilla's really queen of lesbian vampires.
She really is, you guys.
Really is.
I do like in the documentary that's on the Blu-ray, there's a guy who goes, I think when you look at the lexicon of lesbian vampires on film, you have to say Ingrid Pitt is the finest. I'm like, yes, I agree. I'm not to be fair, I have not ranked cinema's lesbian vampires. Yeah,
I've spent many hours.
I've studied them intensely, and yes.
She's really nice.
Yes, quite But I also like, and I'll have some quotes from the 20-minute interview they have with Madeline Smith on the disc, where she talks about, she spends so much of the time talking about how innocent she was when she made this movie. She goes, I didn't even know what a lesbian was.
Well, that's what the same thing she said about her first appearance in Taste the Blood of Dracula, where it's like going, I didn't know what a brothel was. I didn't know I was supposed to be a prostitute.
She tells
I thought
that
it was
story
a
on there
dancer.
too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was only 19 and so innocent of such things.
She goes on and on about how she was a virgin at the time, and I'd never even seen a man naked. So
this is what I'll say. I will say, I totally buy it. Because her acting in her deflowering scene is so terrible. I'm like, this woman has never been sexually pleasured ever.
She does tell a story on there that they said there was a direction to make it more orgasmic, and she asked what an orgasm was.
And again, if you watch it, I kind of believe.
Yeah.
Because she's just doing this, like,
as she said,
my eyes can't get any bigger.
She had just gotten out of Catholic school, she was incredibly inexperienced, and yes, quite naive, she says. She goes on many times talking about how naive she was, and then the less good part of it is she talks about how they sort of preyed on that naivete to get her to do things she was not quite comfortable with.
Yeah, whereas Ingrid Pitt always said, I mean, about all the movies in her life, she was like I had no problem getting naked. Naked at the drop of a hat. Got no problem.
Madeline Smith confirms that and said that did not make things easier.
Oh, dear.
Because Ingrid Pitt was just like, whatever, I'll take my clothes off right now. Who cares?
Yeah. And she's like, oh, well, I guess so. It is interesting that Madeline Smith, I'm not saying she got over that, and maybe she was always uncomfortable, but she did go on.
She's in her 70s going, I'm still mad that they made me do that. She's still very upset about that. Wish she hadn't done that. Is quite upset by it still.
That's not good. But she did go on to have a career almost entirely made on how she looked and got nude in other films. And again, if that wasn't what she wanted to do, it's a shame that was the only career she
also
found.
says that they told her that would only be shown in the Japanese version of the movie, and they actually did shoot other versions of it where she was clothed, but they never used those in any print that she ever saw. So she feels she was duped and lied to, and she said years later she would not have fallen for that, but this being so early in her career, she felt she felt that if she said no to anything, they would have fired her.
Shame on Hammer for doing it that way. That's not the way.
She makes it clear once again, it was the producers. She has nothing but wonderful things to say about Roy Ward Baker, who she just absolutely loved and apparently was a loving father figure to everyone on the film.
This is the first time here that we're dealing with Roy Ward Baker, who is the director of this. I think he does a fine job. This one doesn't stand out as like, oh, there are some interesting effectsy scenes that you're like going, that's them trying. They're trying to be a little bit psychedelic, and boy, is that not really
yeah, we'll
working.
Talk about some trippy dream sequences, but let's dive into the movie right from the start here.
Let's do it.
We open on a book with an entry in it talking about so ends the evil of whatever, the Karnstein. Yeah. And this voiceover starts with this guy talking about I didn't write it all down because it's a lot here, but I did write
it's a lot.
That the Karnstein family are murderers from beyond the grave.
Yep.
And it goes into this whole thing about, we watch this cloaked figure come out of the ground, and this guy goes on to talk. What is this guy's name? I had trouble getting this guy's name.
Why did I close the IMDb?
Is this Von Hartog?
Somebody. Yes, Von Hartog.
Baron Von Hartog, that's it. I just was calling him narrator early on, because he does a lot of narrating at the start of this thing. But he's talking about he stole the shroud from this creature and knew she would come for it. And so he's...
Yeah, a weird twist on the whole vampire thing is like, he knows it's a vampire, rises from the grave, he's watching the vampire do this thing, and then he says he knows that they can't rest without their burial shroud.
Yeah.
So when she goes out to hunt the vampire, and he grabs that shroud, brings it into his castle, and then we basically just wait.
And right away, it's not a Hammer movie without a rowdy pub.
God, right off the bat, we're in a rowdy pub.
Yeah, I was like, sink in, fellas. It's a Hammer picture. Because
there's a guy having a great time, and then he goes out to take a whiz.
Mm-hmm. And then
we almost get a whiz in a Hammer film. We don't, but we almost
still
get
have yet to see our first whiz in one of these movies.
I'm tracking all this stuff, man.
And then yes, I do love the door to this place opening and the guy just standing there with the bloody bite mark in his neck, and everybody's screaming. He's like, Arr.
Yeah. So this vampire apparently came out and instantly got this guy who was about to pee on the side of a building, drained him. Just like within a couple minutes, he shows up back at the bar like on, I am dead. Just standing there with blood
I must
on his
announce
neck.
my own murder.
Didn't even get to pee. And he collapses.
Have no blood, so much urine inside.
So much urine. Death.
Yes, and it is. Oh, everyone is quite horrified by this. As
and then, yeah, you would be. Then mysterious, shrouded, hooded vampire lady comes back to her grave.
Yeah,
can't find that shroud.
And I love that the Baron has just put it out like at the window, like, you looking for this?
Dangling, going, hello, hello. Vampire lady's like, shit.
We cut to a close up of the vampire lady's fangs.
Oh, that's right.
And then he pulled a sword, and I was like, now this movie's getting good.
Yep.
I'm not gonna get my full-on vampire sword movie for a couple movies still, but
no, it takes a bit.
It's on its way. But I'm always like, hell yeah, weapons now. Let's do this. I do love the beginning of this movie though, because if somebody who likes just watching vampires get it.
Yeah.
And so then of course this we see this shadowy figure come up and reveal, and it's a stunningly beautiful vampire woman.
Yes.
And we see this guy be like, "Ooh, I don't want to cut off pretty girl's head." He's tempted by this for a second, and she leans in, and boy oh boy, the exploitation starts right here when her cleavage hits the cross around his neck.
Oof.
That heaving bosom.
It's a close-up of heaving bosom in a diaphanous nightgown. We have reached, I believe, peak diaphanous nightgowns, and they are basically see-through this entire movie.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at even the promotional photos for this, and Ingrid Pitt is in a full-on see-through nightgown.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, I guess underwear had not been invented yet.
But anyway, to see this picture.
Listen, I am mentally immature, but if I don't see this movie, I will explode.
Does Australia have the same worry about the mentally immature? Because I can get right back down there.
He keeps traveling to countries where that warning is not on the poster.
She hits cross, and then she reels back and hisses with the fangs. And then he's like, right, vampire, and just fucking lops her head off.
He lops it.
Love it. Love this opening.
Get a beheading right at the beginning of the movie.
This is what I'm looking for. In the world of exploitation movies, I am looking more for the blood than the boobs.
I know.
Which may say some things about me, but I'm also an American. Sex makes me uncomfortable. Violence is awesome. So
I would provide the balance because though I certainly do love a bloodletting and would not be so in love with horror films if they didn't have that. Yeah, I like trash when there's good trash to be had. But this is a good combination of all elements because we do get a pretty decent beheading right at the beginning and deep cleavage. So there's that. We find out later, maybe I shouldn't jump the gun, but that's his sister. And she was coming on to him. So there's even right off the bat, it's not until we find out later that
do we find that out later? Because he talks about it in the narration that his sister had been taken by them. I think I just assumed it was his sister.
She was not one of the Karnsteins. She was in fact his sister who had been turned by the Karnsteins. So that was the beginning. First he took care of her because that's his sister, and then we'll find out he tried to kill off all the Karnsteins. He started
staking Karnsteins.
He went after those Karnsteins.
But so then we go right to opening credits on that. I'm like, oh, that's how you open a picture right there.
Amen.
And then we come into a fancy dance.
It is so fun.
We've got a little string quartet playing, and everyone is dancing very formally.
And a healthy amount of extras. I was like, again, maybe they spent slightly more coinage because it looks like there's more people here.
And there's Peter Cushing as the general.
As the general.
Yes. To which I expected him to have no other name, since that I saw that in the credits. But no, immediately he has a name. It's General von Spielsdorf.
Yes, and this is his joint.
Yes.
With his daughter or niece.
It's his daughter, Laura.
Yeah. And she's played by Pippa Steele, a very cute blonde lady. And we also see Madeline Smith is in this crowd because she's Laura's best friend, and she's
Emma. Yeah.
Emma, yeah. And everyone's just dancing around. Laura has her beau, who'll be kind of our heroic young lad in the movie.
He's a totally forgettable actor and character, so.
Yeah, pretty much. He serves the
Don't
purpose.
worry about Carl too much in this movie.
Don't worry about Carl too much. But anyway, so everyone's having a delightful time.
Yes.
And then at some point...
Emma's leaving, and Laura's sad about that because it's Laura's birthday is what the celebration is for.
Oh, yes.
But almost immediately as Emma leaves, the countess arrives.
The countess, played by our special guest star, Don Adams.
Guest starring Don Adams. He comes in and goes, "Yes, I have just moved to this town, and Agent 99 and I have..."
enters the scene talking into her shoe.
Yes. Says, "I have to go. Sorry about that, Chief."
Sorry about that, Chief. Missed by that much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry. I put in a Get Smart disc. That's my mistake.
I know you did. I know you did. You got confused.
Yeah.
This is the countess, who apparently she has moved in very close by, so she's a new neighbor.
Just down the street, yeah.
And the general is very happy to see her. What a delight. And she's like, "Oh, and I've brought my daughter." Which name is she going by here?
Here's
Marcella?
Yes, she's going by Marcella here, yes.
All right, this is my daughter Marcella. All right, here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Ingrid Pitt shows up, and of course everyone's like, hello. She's in red. She's stunning. And I do think Ingrid Pitt's a very attractive woman. But in the book and in most adaptations, the whole idea is that Carmilla is eternally probably about 19.
This came up in the documentary. Somebody goes, "Well, yes, obviously it's an enjoyable film, but she is so horribly miscast in this part because she's clearly a lot older than the other women in it."
Yeah, Mircalla, the Karnstein, the vampire woman, she should be close in age to not only Laura and Emma, because that's the whole thing, is that she ends up becoming their good friend, stays over, blah, blah, blah.
And they did hire two, not just young actresses, but two particularly young-looking actresses, too.
Yes. And so you have 32-year-old Ingrid Pitt looking like $1 million, but also...
But looking like a 30-year-old woman.
Her voice is also naturally deep.
Yeah.
And she has a husky voice, which is very, again, part of her allure. I liked hearing her talk. It was very like, yeah, all right. But
what was that? Say more about that. Yes.
Let me rewind that. And she closed. I just wanted to hear more.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is that, she is miscast if we're trying to believe that she is a contemporary of Laura's or Emma's.
Yes.
But
because there's always so much in this movie about, like, and who's going to look after my niece? It's like, you mean that adult woman?
Yeah, and every time someone says, like, oh, those two girls, and I'm like, you mean that woman and that young girl?
Yeah. I mean, they talk about she's older than the governess.
Yeah, Kate O'Mara.
Yeah.
But so anyway, this is our first glimpse of her, and the whole idea is that the Countess, I've been called away because my relative
his brother is dying, something like that.
And she's like, so I have to go. Could I impose on you, General?
Well, but this all happens because a mysterious man rides up to the estate.
The man in black.
A character who I will never understand from start to finish in this movie.
I believe that in the next movie, they imply that the man in black, who is always, that's what he's referred to in the credits here.
Yes.
And he is he is clearly a vampire. I mean,
A
he's
part,
got,
by the way, first offered to our friend Christopher Lee, according to the IMDb trivia,
oh,
who said
I bet
absolutely not.
I bet there was some dialogue when they offered it to him.
Yeah, because
But this
I thought watching this and reading that, I'm like, because he probably turned it down because he's like, that's nothing.
I believe he's revealed later on to be Baron Karnstein, who somehow escaped the massacre. So he's the
that would make sense.
Karnstein.
I kept waiting for the reveal of who or what he is in this movie, and guess what? Nothing happens with him.
And Mircalla or Marcilla or Carmilla is.
I wasn't sure what to write in my notes. When I referred to her.
we could just call her Carmilla, but the whole idea is that she just keeps doing anagrams of her name,
right?
Which apparently is a vampire thing.
Yeah,
isn't that right, Mr. Alucard?
I still backwards. That I gotta put it in a mirror. It's something. Just been eating away at me.
What I do like about the way this plot unfolds is that it's very much almost like the grifters, because what it is, I mean, yes, it's a vampire predator, but it's also this organization, as in they were a family, and the countess is not really her mother. The countess is one of the thralls. So apparently the Karnsteins just get like someone rich to, they sway them, seduce them, and then you're our inside guy who shows up and says, hey, can you take care of my niece or daughter for me? And that's just,
I wish it was more of a Karnstein movie, because I love the idea of vampire family.
Yeah. Well, we get a little bit more of that in the ones to come. It doesn't make the movies any better, but I'm never
gonna get Dark Shadows level of supernatural family drama, though, which is what I really want.
But that's what's happening here is like, this is they've got their mark. Their mark is Laura, and they have dropped off Carmilla to. Can I leave her with you? And
we
the
also
general
get
goes, of course.
Oh yes, absolutely. And because he says this will be great. Laura will have a friend around, who's twice her age. But we get our first hint of maybe some lesbianism here in the scene. Laura and Carl are dancing. She says, "Oh, I like that you're the only person in the room who isn't looking at her and is looking at me." It's like, but look, she's looking at you, Carl. And Carl says, "Oh, I believe she's actually looking at you, Laura."
Yeah, it's like, and that's very subtle. I didn't even pick up on that.
Yeah, that's why I wrote it down, because it was so subtle.
No, dear, I believe she's looking at you.
Yeah,
like perhaps a lesbian would.
She seems to be checking out your ass. You know what? I don't like any of this.
You know what? Let me dance you away from her.
Yeah.
Or she's looking at you a little too much.
Well, maybe she's looking at both of us. Let me get closer.
You know what? Fluidity is important.
Laura, you're cool with this, right? So
you're down. You're down with this?
So then,
because it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Calling herself Marcilla at this point, so that's why it's in my notes. She goes outside, and we see, the man in black on his horse grin with his fangs. And you're like, oh shit, vampire. Who this vampire is, I'll never get the answer to, but you know.
The way you said that, have you seen the Whitest Kids You Know skit about the death of Abraham Lincoln?
Oh yes, yeah.
And they're watching Hamlet at the Ford Theater, and of course it's not Hamlet at all. It's got vampires in it. But I love that drunk Abraham Lincoln is up in the balcony going, "Oh shit, Hamlet! Look behind you, there's a vampire! Shit, Hamlet!
Yeah.
It's a vampire! Shit! Turn around!"
I forgot about this. Yeah, that's how I was watching this movie last night. I was going, "Oh shit, it's a vampire! Watch out, Peter Cushing!"
I would love it if we got, at this point, even in our podcast, still that worked up and be like, "Oh shit, that's a vampire!"
Like we haven't already watched 40 vampire movies. Yeah.
Oh my god. Anywho,
somebody get that vampire.
Get the mysterious man in black grinning at us.
Yeah. Which a lot of people, or some of the historians, brought this up in the documentary on the disc, which is not a character in the novel, and actually robs the main character of her power, because it makes it seem like this male vampire is actually the one pulling the strings.
I could see how people would think that, mainly because I just don't by that from having watched the film. I still saw it as like, I do like the idea of the family, as we pointed out, like it's kind of this operation. But since it seems to still be built on Carmilla's desires, I'm sure it's to advance their family somehow, but it's still tied to, well, who do you want? You know, who is your target? So I still see this as Carmilla's deal, but I think that's just her guy on the outside, there to help out in case things are.
I don't have any issue with it from that point. Once again, my only issue is, who is this guy and why is nothing done with him in this movie? I guess
it is
because
true.
I don't think they were setting up a sequel here.
No,
but I think they took the opportunity to maybe perhaps, I don't know. This is the first time I've seen these. I never really watched these ones.
Do you think they were doing it as they were trying to do a red herring?
Yeah,
like audiences
that he shouldn't be a vampire.
The story or anything, they're like, oh yeah, he's going to come for those young women, plural.
And especially had it been Christopher Lee, we really would have thought that.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, because then you're just like, oh shit, Dracula's in this.
Oh shit, Hamlet!
Look out, it's Dracula!
Look out. It's Dracula, he's right behind you.
So then Laura, of course, is like, hey, why did you go outside? Where were you? You're missing from the party. And Marcilla just immediately spins this another way, and is just like, you're such a beautiful woman. And immediately is caressing her face, and I'm like, I just wrote down lesbians. No,
I put down lesbian with a question mark. Mm-hmm. I wasn't sure where this movie was going.
As I look through my notes, it just keeps saying lesbian again and again. That's all I have written here. Lesbians. Yeah, so immediately, she's not subtle. She's putting the moves on right away. And then
there is and it was something that they comment on the original novella, is that seen in context, it was pretty progressive, simply because the novella, the lesbianism is subtext, but it's also non-judgy. He was Le Fanu presented it as just a part of the story without any kind of judgment on it, and didn't make it seem like lesbianism equals vampirism or evil. It just was like, this is a natural relationship that happens, but one of the people in it is an unnatural, evil thing, and it makes it kind of a tragic romance. But it wasn't any kind of like screed against homosexuality. In a weird way, it was not itself a piece of trashiness. It just, when you get to 1970, they're like going, look at the shit we can get away with. And of course, lesbian vampire movies will go on to be much more explicit later on. But this is where all this stuff kind of starts, and I think they handle it. This is probably, like I said, the most subtle they were ever going to be.
Yeah. I do like in the documentary, they also point out that Roy Ward Baker said, oh, the novella itself doesn't have any lesbian context. They wouldn't have written that. That the man who wrote it was a Victorian and a gentleman. He wouldn't have. And then the guy in the thing goes, yeah, but this movie also ends with a weird nod to the picture of Dorian Gray, and they're like, Oscar Wilde was also a Victorian and a gentleman, and he knew shit was going on. So I think they all were.
And the director's wrong. I've read the novella. It is there. It's just there.
There's no way. And he even said, there's even a thing on IMDb trivia where he said, I read the novella. I don't see where they're getting this gay stuff from.
Wow. Wow.
So, this guy was an old fuddy-duddy, clearly, who's like, nah, I don't see it, because he's just like, I'm not going to look for it at all. I'm going to actively ignore anything that points to it, in fact.
It's just about a bloodsucker. She's just after blood.
That's all it is, just blood. There's no metaphors here. There's no subtext. I don't see subtext. What?
And did you notice that the blood in this one, not as much, not as copious, and not nearly as thick? This was not,
You're getting to my problems with the picture.
No strawberry preserves in this one.
Yeah. Then we cut to our first of several trippy dream sequences.
Oh my God.
Whoa.
This is painful.
Yeah, I was watching this going, it's 1970 and they're trying to do something, aren't they?
what they kind of do is they do a nice little fade into monochrome from color into black and white.
Yeah. I
And
actually
then
like that.
yeah, that's not bad. But then it's all about these shadows that you see quickly, and you see a close up of cat's eyes. That's a big part of it. And then the most hilarious thing, because in the book, in the novella, she's a shape changer as well. That's a classic vampire thing, but it's not bats, it's not wolves. Carmilla turns into a giant cat, and all of her victims have this dream of being basically pressed down in bed by this furry cat, and they get its fur in their mouths. And okay, it's like,
That's
oh,
what
I don't
they
know
said
what
that
they're
they were trying to
talking
be
about.
very true to the novel with this
Well,
sequence.
and they kind of were, but the way they do the whole thing of like giant cat pressing down on them is, I swear to God, it's a furry rug.
Yep.
That they're essentially just
had to be
rolling up the person who's writhing around going, ah. And Laura's having it's a nightmare, but she's also kind of like, this is feeling kind of good. They give her we want both. You're both feeling ecstasy, and then you're terrified. And then, I swear to God, 14 minutes of screaming that I had to turn my volume down again for fear that neighbors would call the police.
This is why I watch all of these movies with my headphones on, because
very smart.
Yeah, well, and also because I'm always watching stuff that's really loud. But
Laura wakes up from her nightmare and does not just scream once; she screams 18 times.
Yeah,
at a very high decibel.
Peter Cushing, the general, comes running.
He comes a running.
Yeah, and she describes this dream, and there was a cat, and I don't know what this was about. And he goes, well, whatever it is, I'm sure it's just a dream. It's a nightmare. You're fine now.
This movie is full of and reminded me a little bit. We were just talking about Nightmare on Elm Street before we came on mic. It reminds me a little bit of that. This is one of those classic, this almost like later day horror movies where it's all adults just disbelieving the kids. Throughout this whole movie, it's like going, you just had a bad dream.
But
you're
mother,
fine.
These slashes across my chest. Oh, it could happen to anyone.
You cut yourself while you were sleeping, which happens a lot. That's common.
Specifically, razor cuts across one's chest. That happens all the time.
Pin pricks, as it were.
So then they go to check on. They're like, we should see if that woke Marcilla. And they're knocking on the door. Knock, knock, knock. No answer. Knock, knock, knock. It's like, I don't know what's going on. And the general's like, oh, she must have slept through it. Let us sleep anyway. On we go. So then that scene's over. And I think I stopped writing them down. We get so many cuts to the man in black just on his horse outside of buildings. Yeah. You just assume that's happening anytime something eerie's happening. I don't need to go into it. Like I said, 4th, 5th time it happens, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to bother to write it down.
You shouldn't have to. And it really doesn't add anything other than I could see it being possibly, like I said, a misdirect where you're thinking, again, I don't know what with the trailer, the poster, I don't know who would come into this not knowing that Ingrid Pitt was the vampire. But maybe they're thinking
something's up with that girl.
But they were hoping that people would just go, oh man, I bet it's that dude on the horse that they keep cutting to.
The man who's clearly a vampire, he must have done it.
Done it.
So then it's the next day.
He has the power to turn into a carpet. A furry carpet.
No, not the carpet.
Thick tile vampire.
Honey, when we get home, I'm throwing out our carpet. I'm
gonna douse it in holy water.
So the general now, it's the next day, and he's talking to the local doctor, and he's very worried about Laura because she seems very weak and pale. And the doctor once again is like, oh, pshaw, it's anemia. I see it all the time. Just get some more iron in her diet, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, again, people just sort of diss it, like, no big whoop, nothing to worry about. But I guess you could also just say, oh, she's pale and listless. Is she British and 19?
Yeah. This actually was just what these actresses were up to. No acting required. So then we cut to upstairs, and Marcilla and Laura are chit-chatting on the bed, and things get a little hot here. She kisses her. Marcilla kisses her, and then starts kind of nuzzling her.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just wrote once again, lesbians, all in caps.
Again, I keep following it up with a question mark because I'm just not sure where this lands. Lesbians?
Yeah. I'm not sold on this yet. And then we have even more things to be concerned about when Carl comes over and says, "Can I see Laura? Because I hear she's ill." And the general says, "It's the weirdest thing. The only person she's allowing to see her is Marcilla." Carl thinks that's kind of odd. She only just met this woman, and I'm her, I guess he's her boyfriend or something, I would assume.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll leave and ask no further questions.
Yeah.
Here, I will say that this is very indicative of my ultimate problem with this movie, which is this movie is very slow. It is very much in the feeling of old Gothic literature.
Yes.
Where it's sort of atmosphere over actual like scares or action or anything like that. And I will say I struggled with the pacing of this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this is, as you're saying, it's not about the thrills of a monster on the hunt, but I liked it for that change. This is more of a character piece in the hands of actors who aren't that amazing.
I was gonna say it is. The problem is I just don't really like it. And once Cushing leaves, I'm really having trouble.
I just kind of like the idea of the more intimate vampire seduction thing, whether it's man, woman, or whatever, where the vampire is, like I said, sort of almost like a con man or grifter worming their way into a family, turning all the authority figures either into thralls who will do their bidding or getting them out of the way. It's weirdly like vampire grooming as well, because of Carmilla wants a companion, so she is basically being the best friend of the one she wants and soothing them and caressing and all that kind of stuff. And you're going, wow, it's a creepier thing, but it is not for vicarious thrills. It's not about, running across rooftops or turning into animals. It's just this sort of drifty, dreamlike thing. And we only see biting happen a couple times. Mostly we just see women kind of getting paler and wasting away. So it's kind of different. And yeah, that's I can tell that you were bothered by that, and I'm
not saying these are my problems with the movie. I recognize what it is and coming from the source material it's coming from, but like
it's because you're strong. You're strong in yourself. You know your likes, you know your dislikes. You're not afraid to share that.
That's absolutely right.
Also,
I do think I see what you're saying, but I wish we had a more charismatic figure than Ingrid Pitt.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't dislike Ingrid Pitt, but it's just, if you want it, because I'm totally on board for the vampire that inserts their way into society, but it seems like they should be really charming. Instead, this woman is weird and suspicious 24/7.
That is very true.
Yeah, like they're always like, it's just like. I would immediately, upon meeting this woman, be like, "That's a fucking vampire." She's obviously out for trouble.
Fair,
Let's stake her right now.
To be fair, I've heard you say that in social situations when you've met people for the first time.
I said, Brendan, we should get out of here. That's clearly a vampire.
You jump to vampire assumption very quickly.
And I've been right sometimes.
Oh man,
we should get out of here. That guy's totally a vampire. So
you're no Dalton Wilcox, but you got a good vampire.
I don't write the poetry of a Dalton Wilcox. That's definitely he's got me there. I'm no poet laureate of the West, that's for sure.
God bless Andy Daly.
So yeah, the now Laura's having another nightmare. Lord, oh Lord, we get another trippy dream sequence. It's basically the same thing.
It's basically the same.
We see the same trippy dream sequence like 4 or 5 times.
Well, I'd say maybe 3 or 4. But the thing is, if you're going to do that, you need to bring new stuff to it each time. Yeah. And instead, what I found hilarious is when it's Emma that has it later on.
Yes.
we're still seeing flashes of Laura. It's like they literally just had the one trippy dream sequence, and they're like, it's so trippy and psychedelic anyway. We'll just throw this on top of Emma's little nightmare.
It was on the shoot schedule for the day, and the guy was just like, "Didn't we already shoot this? Let's skip it."
They just lay that on, and so the sort of orgasmic face that we're seeing in the nightmare is Laura, and I'm like, wait, guys, couldn't you have done one for Madeline Smith? Was she too busy? Did she have to get back to Catholic school? What? I don't get.
And then, of course, Laura wakes and the general comes in again, but now she wants Marcilla. She's only wants Marcilla. But they go to get her, and they look in her room, and she's not there. But then all of a sudden, she is in Laura's room. What? How? What? And now Carl has gone to summon the doctor. But before the doctor is there, Laura says Carmilla says of Laura, she's dead. And the general's just like, what? That can't be. But we need the doctor to come and confirm this. And I have some questions about the way this doctor handles things, because he's going to listen to her heart here. But first, let's get that boob out.
Look, you got to press those are very primitive instruments, and you got to press that ear trumpet or whatever the fuck it is, that very early stethoscope. It has to be pressed against that flesh.
Right. This is here for the accuracy. That's what it is.
You cannot have a nightie in the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, if he did not free that boob, hashtag free that boob, we wouldn't have seen those bite marks. That was the important thing.
Yes, which I did like.
Carmilla,
this is where I did
not biting their necks.
Yeah, this is where I'm like, okay, this is sliding into sleazy hammer. We're dealing with boob biting in this movie, where it's just like, well, if they're lesbians, they'd obviously bite each other's boobs.
Hashtag boob biting.
But like this screams of that, where it's just like, well, clearly she drank the blood from her boob.
Again, John, I don't know why you're being so sarcastic about it. I'm buying into this wholeheartedly.
I'm just using logic. It only makes sense. When I saw that, I did roll my eyes at the bite mark on the boob.
Yes.
But and it is just like, and I like the doctor indicating to the general, like, look at your daughter's boob and see there's a bite on it. That wasn't there yesterday.
What I found interesting about, one of the things is that they were being fairly true to the source material to some degree. Also, by putting this in that time period, this is actually 18th century. This is happening before the Dracula films we've seen.
Yeah, it definitely has that vibe to it. I mean, you know.
The only thing that cracked me up is they do the shot of the outside of the general's, big mansion house. Mm-hmm. And they show the same angle of it, probably because the other angle would show something very modern.
He's got a satellite dish on it.
But still, the angle they do have on it, even at night, it's very apparent when they have a coach come up, when the doctor shows up and all that. You can see a chain link fence around an area that possibly was like a tennis court, but they've maybe put sod down. But the chain link fence was still there. And I was like, I'm sorry, 17, what the fahay? There was no fucking chain link fence.
I'm trying this new thing. I'm the first to implement it. It's called a chain link fence. It's for my tennis court.
Yeah. Your what? And then he has to explain the whole concept of tennis.
Yeah.
And court for tennis.
He was a real early adopter, this general.
Man, this general. He's the guy to follow. He's got his finger on the pulse.
So then they turn around and Marcilla's going, what? She's gone. And then the movie just cuts to her grave. And it's like, oh, she's a vampire.
Yep.
I like the cut to the grave. Like, in case you don't get it, audience, she was a vampire.
Yeah. Which was helpful.
Yeah. That blew my mind. I was like, wait, what?
What about the guy on the horse?
Well, believe me, I asked what about the guy on the horse plenty of times while watching this movie, but and including when it was over and still right now. So then we cut to the general having told Emma that Laura's dead and she's crying. And the general says, I'm going to get out of town. I don't need to be here. Because his daughter just died, so it's sad.
A lot of this movie are parental people who are concerned about their youth, or in this case, the youth has died, leaving town.
Yes.
There's a lot of this where it's like they're basically just saying, God, I hope nothing else bad happens while I'm away.
Yeah.
Mircalla, Carmilla, whatever your name is, could you just stay here and look after my innocent daughter while I go out of town?
I'm very upset at this because I'm like, no, don't send Peter Cushing away.
I know. And they do for a long time.
Because I was hoping he was going to turn into a vampire hunter from this point on.
Well, he does kill one, but
I know, and believe me, it's my favorite part of the movie. But
he's not our guy. He is not our guy.
I know. We have to get Professor Van Helsing in this.
Yep.
Even though timelines don't. Yeah, a Van Helsing.
Be an ancestor.
Yeah. So this is just as confusing to me as anything. The random woman in the woods whole thing.
Oh yeah.
What? I mean, this is just like the Man in Black thing too, which he's even part of this. I'm just like, this just feels like random vampire stuff to put in here.
It is, but if it serves any purpose, I think the only purpose is, again, later on we do get the impression that the Karnsteins, Carmilla herself, they see it in two ways. There are some people that are just going to be fodder. Some people are just going to be their food. And very often those, as we see, are lower class or poorer people. They'll just go into the village, they'll drain, and they drink from the neck when they do this. They drain them and they're like, that was delicious. But the ones that they are grooming, that they want to bring into their circle to build their family, those are the higher class or aristocratic ones that Carmilla has fallen in love with and bites on the boob. So they are just showing you two different kinds of vampire victimry in this movie.
Well, then I wish this was more savage. Like I wish they had gone farther with the gore here to really make that clear.
You are a bloodthirsty.
Yes, I am. But in this case, I actually think the juxtaposition of the two
there were
things.
Trees around there. Why couldn't one of the trees get splattered? You just see I
just want fountains of blood everywhere I go. Yeah.
The John Campbell story.
I won't be happy till we're spraying blood everywhere. I'm still living off of the beheading from the beginning of the movie. That's getting me through the rest of this thing.
No, it is a good.
It's a solid beheading. And we get a second beheading at the end of this movie, which thumbs up. So meanwhile, then we cut to a carriage is stuck in a rut, or it's coming down the road and it gets stuck in a rut. And I do like all these guys getting tossed off of it.
Yeah.
And the countess is inside. And what's this? It's Morton, who is Emma's father.
Yeah.
He rides up and he's like, "Oh no, what's going on here? This is looks like a terrible accident. Can I do anything to help?" And the countess says, "Well, I really have to be going to where I need to go, but could you by any chance take in my niece?"
Yeah, this time it's niece. Yeah, it is. It's another in the grift where it's like they have locked onto a new target. So now
to be fair, I do wish these vampires were Angelica Houston and John Cusack instead, if we're talking.
Yeah,
grifting. But
actually, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I would.
They've been like a vampire family.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Man, I mean that movie's already great, but vampires
that would have
made it even better.
Yeah. Annette Bening as their the new vampire joining their group.
Angelica Houston kind of is born to play a vampire.
Yeah, she got very close with the Addams family.
Morticia Addams, yeah, very much that kind of vibe to her. But she does have sort of a supernaturally vibe.
She does.
Yeah. And so he's like, and he just goes, "Of course, I have a teenage daughter. This'll be great. Oh, she's 35. Oh, well, then we'll have to rethink it." No, that doesn't happen, of course. But yes, we just immediately cut to she's now going by, what's she going by now? It's not Carmilla now. This
is now Carmilla.
This is Carmilla. It was Marcilla that she was going by before. Yes,
yeah, it was Marcilla. Now it's Carmilla.
Now it's Carmilla, and it's really yeah. Oh my god. These vampires not very creative. We cut to Emma, and she's taking a German lesson with her governess.
Yes.
who has a name, which is, was it Mademoiselle Peridot?
Peridot.
Yeah, played by Kate O'Mara. And Carmilla knows the German, and Emma doesn't. She's like, "Oh, German is ever so hard." Madeline Smith is just this like, "Oh, doe-eyed little innocent," which apparently she was in real life, based on I do like she go when she was telling the story about, I didn't know what an orgasm was then. Then she goes, I mean, I do now. I've had sex since, you guys.
By the way, I figured it out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The other thing I love about her, she always says bosoms. They made me
nice.
show my bosoms.
And ladies and gentlemen, they did.
Yeah, and we'll get to it. There's also, well, I'll just say it right now. She also had an anecdote about the producer, Jimmy Carreras, called her and said, "I don't know how to put this, but your bosoms are just not going to work for this movie.
Wow.
They're just not ample enough." And she said, "Oh, wait, I can do something about this." And she said she ate a lot of yogurt and dairy products for the weeks leading up to this and got bigger bosoms as a result of it, is what she claims.
That's a bizarre story, and I'm not saying she's lying, but that's just weird.
It's a super bizarre story.
Yeah.
And she said, "Next thing I knew, I filled out those dresses."
Well, good for her.
I see in her and reading some of her IMDb trivia, she had been anorexic in her teenage years, so perhaps there was something about her having sort of lost weight in an unhealthy manner, then gained it back, which may have also increased the bust size. I don't know.
Say that having seen her in later things, because this is like her second movie or whatever. This is early days. This is the thinnest you'll ever, I think, see her, and I could easily see her being, and that's sad to say, an anorexic teen, perhaps, which does make her genuine, actual curves stand out against such a thin frame.
Right.
In later movies I've seen her in, which are, there's like these dumb British comedies, the Carry On things.
She did say on there too, she goes, "Most people know me for my comedy work."
Yeah, where she did doe-eyed, silly roles.
Sure,
which
I could see that. I can 100% see that.
But she fills out. Like, I think at the height of her fame in Britain, which was in the 70s, as being like a model, and she was on TV shows, always comedies and these movies, is that she was kind of voluptuous. Like, she was bow. So in this thing, it's interesting to see, like, wow, she really is stick thin. Like, I had forgotten that she was this skinny in it. And bless her. I mean, she's 19 and her skills are very limited. She is perfect as a doe-eyed innocent, but she's doing it almost in a community theater basic way.
Yes,
like
it has that vibe to it.
She's just doing like a little girl voice and big eyes the whole time, and you're like, oh dear. And next to her, Ingrid Pitt looks like fucking, like Helen Mirren. Just looks like, it's like Dame Judi Dench next to someone who's doing this all the time.
And so, well, we get to this scene now where she walks into Carmilla's room, and Carmilla is in the bath. And apparently
just unashamed.
Well, and once again, actually kind of fits from what I gather the real life personalities of these women were here, which is Ingrid Pitt was totally fine to be naked. There's even a story she tells about the director said, would you prefer a closed set when we shoot this scene? And Ingrid Pitt was like, I don't fucking care. And Madeline Smith was like, yes, please.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
I retroactively apologize to her for the awkwardness of that situation. That's just, I hate to say that was the time it was.
She did say that the crew was very lovely. Everybody took good care of her. But
I do think that's the way it was. Not a sleazy operation, but just that they were like going, this is what we're now doing at Hammer. So I hope you're okay with it.
And much like what we talked about with that rape scene in the Frankenstein movie, it seems like everybody was like, look, we're not crazy about this. Word from on high is this needs to happen. We're going to do everything we can to take care of you. And she just talks about how, what was it, Roy Ward, what's his name? Baker?
Roy Ward
Baker. He's just like, in between takes, he had me covered up, and he fetched me a hot water bottle, and He just was very fatherly, apparently.
And I will say that for all of us, we're tiptoeing around it to some degree, but this is a big jump forward for Hammer as far as these elements go. But you look at this through the lens of today, and this is so incredibly tame.
No, I will say that about the whole movie. Because this was built up as the erotic one, I was waiting for, and I really was like, oh, that's really it. There's no explicit sex in the movie.
No. This whole scene is just to show how Carmilla is trying to break down the inhibitions of this woman that she at least wants, whether or not she's in love with her or not. But it's this young woman who's clearly very repressed. So of course Carmilla's going to be there taking a bath naked, and then says, hey, if you like those dresses of mine, try them on yourself. And she's like, oh, can I? It's like, yeah, go ahead. So Emma is like, I'll try this one on. And then of course Carmilla goes, no, you take off your underwear, because
that dress doesn't fit with a bodice.
So she's like, should I?
Yeah.
So it is bashful Emma, who is played by bashful innocent Madeline Smith, takes off her top and puts on the dress, or starts to, and then they scamper around the bed.
Oh, it's much frolicking. Yes,
they frolic.
And
it's like, come back here, you! Oh, stop it!
Whatever country allowed our friend to see this, I'm sure he was just like, oh my god!
Oh my god! Tell me that they take a shower next. Showers hadn't been invented yet. God damn it!
maybe they invent the shower.
They invent the shower. I'm okay with anachronisms as long as I get a shower scene.
I told you we shouldn't have gotten notes from this man.
But basically, they chase each other around the bed, then playfully fall upon it, and of course, Carmilla playfully falls upon Emma, and Emma just doe-eyed looks at her like, "What's happening? What are these strange feelings?" And then we're out of there. We're
out of there, and they come downstairs for dinner, and they're both in these very colorful, fancy, pretty dresses. And now I guess we're linking them visually in the movie. At that point, and yes, I mean, once again, the filmmaking here is totally competent, and so they come to dinner. Then now Emma has her trippy dream, which is really just Laura's trippy dream again.
It's completely the same one.
Yeah, only this time they go, "Oh, wait, you said a cat? Was it Gustav? This cat?"
Jesus Christ. What happens is Kate O'Mara, who is Madame Pompadour,
Madame Peridot.
She, just like all the other adults, comes in and says, well, you keep having these nightmares. What's in it? And she's like, well, I see a giant gray cat and it's on me. She goes, are you sure it wasn't just Gustav?
Yeah.
And we see a gray cat and she picks it up and says, see, just Gustav. She's like, no, I said it was a giant fucking gray cat. She said just like that.
And it's like, well, wait a minute. Maybe Gustav passed in front of this lantern and it was his shadow that made him look gigantic.
It's like, look, now you see a giant gray cat, which is a shadow on the wall.
I love them going out of their way to do detective work to be like, let's explain everything.
Well, again, it's just so.
Then Cushing comes in not as the general, but as his Sherlock Holmes character, and he says, "I'll tell you what." No,
it gets very confusing at that point.
Yeah. Cushing plays 5 different parts in this movie. No,
you wish.
Yeah. Oh, I do. Yeah,
it's true.
I just want
Carmilla.
Yeah, I want the Vampire Lovers, a one-man show starring Peter Cushing. And he says, "Oh dear, it's me. I'm so innocent and doe-eyed."
I wonder, and he's such a good actor and such a gentleman, but I have to wonder, like, if he's off camera when he's watching Madeline Smith do scenes, just going, "Oh dear God."
They asked her about her relationship with Peter Cushing on the documentary, and she said, "I'm not sure we ever said a word to one another," because they really aren't in the movie together.
That's true.
And she did say the one scene they were in, which is that big party scene, she said he was intensely introverted and just hyper focused on his work and didn't really, she said he wasn't a mean man, but he was just like, I'm preparing. You know,
Yeah.
he wasn't joking around and stuff like that. He was very, this is the work. I'm doing my job. I'm in character. You know.
I buy that.
Yeah.
I buy that.
Yeah. So she
And
said
they
she
really
really has
don't
nothing to
interact
say
much.
about him.
That's okay. God bless her.
Yeah, nothing bad to say about him either, but just nothing. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. He was an actor's actor.
Yes,
in that sense. Yes, I am acting. And I did see in the IMDb trivia that they say he was a very late addition to this movie. So
interesting.
That also might explain his limited presence here. Was they're like, this movie needs a little Cushing in it. We couldn't get
more
Lee.
Pushing for the pushing.
Yeah, we couldn't get Lee. Let's get the other guy. Yeah. So yeah. Now Emma has the trippy dream. But Morton says to call the doctor. Because she's weak and once again anemic or whatever, and Carmilla says, "Don't worry, she'll take care of her." Because once again, Morton goes, "Hey, call the doctor because I have to go away on a business trip.
I have to leave town."
Yeah,
at the worst possible time.
Yeah, and on his way out of
best for you, Carmen.
On his way out of town, he sees Carl doing some sort of backbreaking labor. And I don't know what he was doing exactly, digging something. And he goes, "Hey, Carl, will you just check in on Emma at some point?" And I do like that he's like, "Well, I can't right now. I got to work." He's like, "Oh, just in the next couple of days."
Yeah, whatever, man.
And he does say, "Yes, it's her." Oh, because he says, "Yes, she has a friend staying with her, so I can't mind you'd have a problem being alone with two beautiful girls."
Yeah.
Which, want to have a threesome with my daughter and her friend?
Then Carl actually does have the suspicious look, like you say a friend.
Yeah.
You
know, there was a friend before Laura died.
Yeah. Carl basically just is apparently the guy that will fill in for any local landowner's daughter if they need a boyfriend.
Yeah.
It's like, well, Laura's dead. Do you want to go hook up with my daughter?
I guess.
Emma?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't right now.
Yeah.
I got so much digging to do.
Give me a little bit. Do you also want me to do the friend? How's this going?
That's going to cost you extra.
Carl, town gigolo.
Carl is also a member of Hot Cops.
Was there a costume request? He tears off the pants. Yeah.
Oh, God.
So, yes. Then Emma is talking to, I think she's talking to Carmilla when she says this. She's like, "I'm having those dreams." Oh no, she is. She's talking to the I think she's talking to the doctor actually when she's, I wish I had written down who she's talking to, but she says, because the doctor's going like, "Well, they're just dreams, whatever. You have a dream once in a while." She's like, "No, it's like every night, and they're the exact same dreams."
Yeah.
She said, "I'm afraid I'm going mad," and he's once again like pish posh.
Everyone's pish-poshing.
Yeah, this doctor is waving
seriously.
everything away, even though this is the same doctor who saw the vampire bite.
That's right.
So why is this guy pish-poshing all over the place?
I don't know, John.
He knows it's vampires. And so then Emma's talking to Carmilla later, and she's like, "Oh, that Carl. Now that Laura's dead, I am really sad about that, but that Carl is something." And then Carmilla just loses it at this. The idea that she misses Laura and likes Carl, and she just freaks out. And then, I mean, Carmilla is a very emotionally unstable woman because she's like, she's all pissed. And then she's like, "I'm sorry, I love you." And this is when she says, "I love you."
Yeah.
I love you, and I don't want anyone to ever take you away from me. You're mine.
Yeah. This is where, I mean, again, there's not a lot of depth here. But I do like the concept of Carmilla being, I'm reminded of like serial killers in reality and fiction, where in their minds it is a romantic attachment, but they're looking for the perfect one, and they always end up killing the one they're fascinated by, and then they're like, "Well, that couldn't have been my chosen one, and I'll move on to the next one." So in their minds, it's a big romance. But in reality, they are just going to keep killing and killing because there'll never be anyone that is the ideal for them. So it's a shading there where she is unstable and she's like going, no, I'll never leave you. Just stop talking about you wanting anybody else because I'm all you'll ever need and I'll never go anywhere. And you will be fine as long as you stay with me.
Yes. I do have another quote here from Madeline Smith that I find very fun. It's not from I don't know where it's from, some interview she did. She says, "The one thing that was difficult for me was the lesbian aspect of it. I really couldn't be less lesbian than I am. I mean, I am totally disinterested in females in that way. I really felt it was distasteful. I hated doing it, loathed doing it. I just love the idea of I couldn't be more hetero."
That's a bit much. It sounds like she just joined a fraternity and she's like going, I'm not into that butt stuff.
Yeah.
Listen, I just want you to know I'm down to hang out with you bros, but I'm totally not into that butt stuff.
That's
like,
that's
okay.
the
all right,
proper
man.
British woman equivalent of saying that. Yes.
Yeah.
I just was like, and I mean, because I just wanted on the record, I am as far away from a lesbian as you can get.
It's like, Madeline, it's okay. We don't go around calling you one of the greatest symbols of lesbian cinema.
No, that's Ingrid Pitt.
It's Ingrid Pitt.
Yeah, but in the lexicon of lesbian vampires on film, she is surely the greatest.
She surely is.
I mean, she is what, queen of the lesbians, or what was that thing about the tagline?
Did it say queen of the lesbians?
Was it something? Was it queen of the lesbian vampires? What was the
really? Oh, where is it now?
I got it here. Carmilla is really queen of lesbian vampires.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah,
I'll take it.
Yeah, been declared.
And she had her business cards made up with that. No. Says right here.
Once again, we cut back to this woman who was captured in the woods. Now she's in some kind of cabin or something.
No. This is a different woman.
This is a different woman. And she looks very similar.
And later on, they do talk about, like the dairy farmer's daughter was
the next scene, actually. Yeah.
And before that was the blah blah blah. They mentioned that women have been dying and being
random
killed.
Cutaways to this. This is the stuff that does not work for me story wise, because I thought this was the same woman, and they had got her, and they were like keeping her and drinking her over a period of time.
No, this is just another woman who's asleep in her whatever
because
cottage.
she's tossing and turning in the night, and then a hand grabs her, and then she screams, and then another woman comes in and sees her with the vampire bite, and there's some blood, not enough blood, and that woman screams, "I want buckets of the stuff." We'll get to it. We're going to talk about the 70s once we're done with Hammer, so I know there's plenty of blood.
Yeah, and eventually we'll get to Near Dark.
That is actually my favorite vampire movie.
Fountains and fountains of blood.
That should come as no surprise, then that actually is my favorite vampire film.
I am not surprised by that, and it's one of my favorites. It's so great.
One, yeah.
So great.
Both of my favorite vampire movies are in the 80s, actually. So,
the other one is Once Bitten.
Classic.
Lauren Hutton.
Classic. Early Jim Carrey, man. Come on.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No.
Or Vamp with what's her name? Jones.
Jones? Who am I?
From come on.
I know the movie.
From View to a Kill. Grace Jones.
Grace Jones, yes, of course, yes.
How could I forget one of my relatives? But
well, you see her every year at the family reunion. You and Grace Jones.
I do.
Yeah.
She's tough to reconnect with. She's
so
kind of out there.
Then they see this funeral procession. Yes, Emma and Carmilla see this funeral procession moving through town, and they're saying a prayer.
Like this scene.
And Carmilla's like, just hearing the prayer and stuff like that, like, eh. And Emma's like, oh, isn't it so sad that the woman died and another woman died? And then I wrote this down. She says, "You must die. Everybody must die."
Yeah. Carmilla is reacting to like the prayers being said and the procession of the funeral, like it's causing her great pain, like it's like the noise of the prayer, and then does that snap where she just grabs him and goes, "You'll die. Everyone must die." And again, there's that like, yeah, she's kind of cuckoo. And then she calms down, and again, it's all about huggy hug with Emma.
Yeah.
It's
a lot of Carmilla flying off the handle and then going like, "I'm so sorry. No. I'm
so
nice.
sorry.
I'm totally stable. Don't worry."
Also, she can go out in the sun. She
Yeah.
just prefers to be in the shade.
Yeah. Whatever. I mean, this is a different vampire thing than the Dracula movie, so I'm cool with it.
Yeah, no, I'm okay with that too. But I'm okay with Dracula being out in the sun too because he does it in the book.
That's right, but that's really been pretty well washed away by most pop culture depictions of him.
It's true, but Bram Stoker's Dracula put it in there.
But the first movie in the Hammer franchise establishes that he's killed with sunlight by Van Helsing, so...
Yeah, well...
So I'm more about the inner consistency. If you want to make a Dracula who can go out in the sun, but Hammer is firmly established that it will kill him.
Yeah, well...
Yeah, what are you going to do with these movies, though? They're not watching them.
I often think it's about how much he has fed recently, how strong he is.
Well,
I think it's like building.
read.
I think it's like building up a resistance to it.
Okay.
So if you catch him in a weakened state, then he's not ready for the sun, and it will.
Well, he definitely was in a weakened state after Cushing pummeled the hell out of him in that sequence.
Yeah. Well, I mean, after having all those candlesticks thrown at him.
So then we have Carmilla reading to Emma, and it's a somewhat saucy tale.
Yeah. Yeah, reading her like I guess that era's romance novel.
Mm-hmm. Because the book,
then he took her in his arms and kissed her.
Kind of leads up to the sex, and then Carmilla stops, and Emma's like, "Oh, we should read another chapter." But instead, she ends up talking about her dreams again, about the cat. But then she goes, "And in fact, now that I think about it, the cat turns into you, and then everything's fine." But then it's also weird because it feels like my blood is draining from me.
Yeah. It's so weird. It's scary, then it's sexy, and then I feel like I'm being drained of life.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Emma has another dream, and she wakes up screaming.
Yep.
So the governess comes in, and she's like, "Yes, it was a terrible dream." And it's like, "Oh, it's probably just the cat again." It's like, "Well, did the cat do this?" And she shows her the bite marks on her boob.
Yep.
Of course, because that's the classic Carmilla move there, biting the boob.
Hashtag bite the boob.
Yeah. And then Carmilla's right on it. She's in the room going, "Oh, I know exactly what those bite marks are from. It's from this very sharp brooch I gave Emma."
Yeah.
See?
Like,
two pokey needles are in it.
These two little prongs. And Kate O'Mara goes, "Oh, yeah, that's got to be it.
Yeah.
That's it right there."
And then Carmilla says, "In fact, why don't you have this brooch, governess?"
Well, this is like, there's this whole lead in where Carmilla's always got her eye on who's my obstacle. Like, who's going to get in my way?
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe the governess. So immediately when they leave the room, isn't this where she basically is like, "Yeah, hey, what's up over there, man?"
Yeah, they go to her room and she's like, "Turn down the lights and let's take off our clothes."
Yeah. So essentially, she isn't out to kill her, but seduce her to turn her into a thrall, which means she'll do her bidding.
And was Kate O'Mara just lucky, or did she refuse to do nudity? Because I feel like this scene easily could have been more exploitative than it was, because it's presumed they both take their clothes off, but it's in the dark.
Yeah. I can only assume that maybe she had something in her contract, and they're like, "Well, it's the governess, so..."
Because I can't imagine them saying,
"I know,
let's not put more nudity in this thing."
I know. And Kate O'Mara, I mean, they make up for it with crazy cleavage on all of these ladies.
Oh, well, I mean, that's just that's going to be an established part of Hammer forever.
And Kate O'Mara is very striking, but yeah, she is the one that gets away with this movie going, "I kept my top on."
Mm-hmm. And was it Pippa Steele's like, "I only showed one boob."
Give me some credit for that amazing Kate O'Mara impression.
It was like she was here.
Thank you. I worked hard on it. I just wanted that appreciation. Okay.
It was as if she came back from the grave, because I see here she did die in 2014.
Oh, Kate O'Mara.
Yeah. Madeline Smith still with us, though.
That's good. She should always live.
We lost Pippa Steele at a young age, though, 92. She was only 44.
Oh.
That's too bad. Anytime I see that, though, I am always just like, what happened? She died of cancer.
I thought
that's
sad. That's sad. She was fine.
Mm-hmm. She didn't have much of an acting career, looking through her
I think
IMDb.
Kate O'Mara is actually quite good. She had a nice long career.
Yeah,
herself.
Kate O'Mara I know from other stuff.
Yeah.
Namely Doctor Who.
Yeah. And she does have a look that is very, I mean, she's Irish and she looks like traditional, like Black Irish. That's
Yes.
the facial features, the hair, the whole thing. So she's very striking, but yeah, she gets away very clothed.
Good for her.
Good for her.
And by the way, according to the IMDb trivia, this was the scene that the British censors tried to remove most of all for some reason, which I think is interesting. They really were like, that's got to go. That has to go.
I think it's probably because, I mean, it's Ingrid Pitt drops everything, but it's shadowy.
Mm-hmm.
So she's fully nude in this scene as opposed to the others. Even in the bath scene, she stands up and turns away from the camera. We're not seeing any full frontal kind of stuff. So that could be the reason, but I think probably the reason is this is clearly seduction, whereas the things with Emma are much more, they're flirty, cute, romantic, like the little kisses on the face and so forth. But this is clearly two women going in a room and going, get naked, we're about to fuck. So I think probably just intent alone is where they're like going, we need to trim this because it is too obviously that.
Oh, okay. I found the thing. This was chief censor reading the script wanted this scene.
Oh,
removed.
really?
So not even. Script? Yeah, not even from the actual shoot, because I do, and maybe that's why this scene is so dark and different than the other scenes. Was they were like, no. Far
we don't
too
even
titillating.
Want that in there. Yes, far too titillating.
Got hot under the collar reading it. We can't have this. I never. I'm sure that guy has
sweat from my palms have wrinkled the pages of the script.
I'm sure that British censor said, "Well, I never," countless times throughout his life. Well, I never. That's why he became the censor. They heard him. No, that guy's perfect. Yeah,
Reginald, I never Whittingham.
So it says on his tombstone.
Yeah. Well, we knew Reggie. He was a delight, but he always kept talking about things he had never. You know.
Well, I never.
We know, Reggie. We know.
That's right, and make note of it, fellas.
I remember the one time he came in and said, well, I did once. That blew my mind.
He had done something. We couldn't believe it.
He had done something once. I wrote it down in my diary. I was so blown away.
So now, presumably, obviously, having been seduced by Carmilla, now the governess is in on this, because when Carl comes to see Emma, the governess says, "Oh, she's not here," and her friend is gone, and they both left for the day. And he goes, "Well, can I come back tomorrow?" She's like, "Why don't you try next week, Carl? We're super busy right now."
He's like, "I was supposed to check on her, and can I come back?" He's like, "No, well, how about next week?"
Yeah.
She totally won't be dead and a vampire by then.
Yes, because in the very next scene, well, Carl does leave with a There's a lot of Carl going in this movie.
Yep,
there's a lot of it.
Yeah, almost as much as the guy on the horse.
Yeah.
Showing his fangs and going, "I'm totally a vampire."
Yeah. Yes, it's all going according to plan. A plan you'll never be let in on, audience. We don't know what's happening.
Those lines were when they were still considering Christopher Lee for it. By the time this guy shows up, there are no lines. No dialogue.
No. Well, he's not Christopher Lee. Let's not pay him as much.
Nope.
So we'll give him no lines. No, but I was going to say the very next scene is the maid finds Emma looking extremely ill.
Yeah.
And yes, this is our first, I believe this is our first introduction to our favorite butler.
Yeah.
Renton. Harvey Hall plays Renton. Yeah.
What's interesting about this character is he has not really been established. He's been kind of in a background kind of way.
Yeah.
But it's weird how suddenly, from this scene onward,
like a major character.
Like a major character.
It is I, Renton the butler.
He works with agency and seems to be on the tip with this vampire ship pretty quickly. And anyway, so he's like, "Oh, she doesn't look good. we should maybe send for the doctor. And it's like, well, ask Madame Peridot first. So he goes down and says, hey, Madame Peridot. And she goes, what is it, Renton? Emma looks really sick. Should we call the doctor? No, she's fine. She's gonna be
absolutely
just fine.
And he walks out of there, and then it cuts to him at the pub going, she says she looks fine, and we shouldn't call the doctor. Stupid Madame Peridot.
It's another raucous happening pub,
yeah.
and Renton apparently in his off hours likes to tie one on.
Yeah, well, because they even say, the bartender's even like, boy, if the high society people you work for knew this was how you spent your evenings, you wouldn't have a job no more.
And they're like, when did you become a major character?
Yeah. And then he has the audacity to say, he's like, it's almost like she's a vampire or something. And this entire rowdy bar goes silent.
What's amazing is during the whole scene, as background, obviously they had a lot of Foley and so forth.
Yeah, because we don't see the rowdy bar. We're just hearing it. We're just hearing the two guys in the shot.
But there's also, you hear a jukebox playing tequila. And the second he goes, like she's a vampire. Record scratch. This is the first time in film history that we hear a song stop because of a record scratch.
I mean, it might as well have been. It really is that moment.
The vampires.
Yeah. because he does. It's just like, what? I'm just kidding. And the bartender's like, you don't joke about vampires around here, all right? We're currently undergoing a vampire plague.
The landlord, as in the bar owner, it goes off and he's very serious about, dude, vampires are nothing to joke about, and that shit's serious. And then he's like going, I need you to come with me and talk to the mayor or whoever it is.
Well, yeah, because I do like there's a shot of Renton where he's like, oh, it is vampire. Like you can see it on his face dawning, like, that adds up actually.
That makes sense. Well, with all the boob biting, hashtag boob biting.
What?
I am determined to make one of these hashtags.
How do I get in on the boob biting?
Don't want to become a vampire. Yeah. Maybe I just will bite boobs. But
no, maybe the boob biter's on the loose again. It's a boob biting spree. That'll be my thing. Oh, don't go near Renton. He's a boob biter. That's his thing.
So, Renton now becomes kind of, for a brief while, the champion of Emma, and he's going to.
This is another problem I have with the movie: is it cannot settle on who its hero is.
That's very true.
Is it Carl? Is it Renton? Is it the guy from the beginning who comes back way late in the movie, considering he's in the first 5 minutes and then the last 10 minutes? And no other part of the movie. And the general disappears for a long time. You're waiting for the vampire hunter character to... And the answer is it's a bunch of old dudes wandering around.
It's a bunch of old dudes. It's very true. But I'm following along. And is it immediately he's talking to after this?
No, there's a scene where Carmilla once again comes to Emma's bed and Emma says, am I dying?
Oh, right.
And Camilla's like, yeah.
Yeah, you're totally dying.
Yeah.
Will I live long enough to see Daddy when he comes home?
She's like, she goes, we'll see.
Maybe.
Yeah. Only if you're a good little girl.
You got like another half quart in you.
Yeah. No, this is so then it's the doctor shows up and the governess is like, I thought I expressly said no doctor. Who summoned the doctor? And then Renton gets this like step into close-up frame and he's like, I did. I sent for the doctor.
Well, first he denies it. First he has this thing, he goes, oh no, the master of the house.
Oh, that's right. That's what it is.
He said to have the doctor come and look at her. And the governess lady's like, really? And he's like, yeah. You want to test me on this?
Yeah. And then it's something like, was this... No, I think because he tells the maid, or he tells somebody else that the guy sent for him. And then when the governess was like, was this you? He's like, yes, it was.
It was. I care about Miss Emma.
Yeah.
So the doctor finds the boob bite, knows this is now vampire stuff, which he had poo-pooed.
Yeah.
Oh, he had poo-pooed it really good earlier.
And even because initially the doctor's checking her out, and and Renton brings in garlic flowers, and he's like, "Oh my god, man, God, what are you out of your mind?" Then he sees the boob bite. He's like, "You know what? Bring him in. Bring him in. Yep, put him right here."
This immediate, it's this immediate turn because
and he even goes, "Can you get more of those? Can you get like a lot more?"
He goes, "That is such a you fucking superstitious."
He even says,
idiot.
"What, have you been talking to the locals?" Oh god.
Yeah, and then he sees the boob bite. And he's like, "Going, on the other hand,
yeah, can you get like
nothing
a ton more of that?
Flowers.
Like so much more of it."
And then he digs in the jewelry box and finds a crucifix that he puts on Emma.
Just gonna put this here. He puts that around her neck, and and then I do like the governess being like, "Hey, excuse me, maid." Was her name Gilda? I think it is, something like that.
I don't remember.
Gretchen. It's Gretchen, I think.
Gretchen.
And she says, "Hey, any chance you can get those flowers out of there?" And the maid's like, "Oh no, the doctor said they have to be in there." And now once again the governess takes us out on Renton, who's like, "I don't fucking care. No vampires are getting to her now." Because he's holding the garlic flowers, and he's like, "What? You got a problem with these?" And he sort of pushes them in her face, and the governor's like, "Get those away from me."
Well, Renton's figured this out too. He's like, she's in on it somehow.
And then he chases her into her room with the garlic flowers. Yeah. And he's like, "Got her."
It's just like I did with an ex-girlfriend of mine who was afraid of cheese. I've told you that story, right?
No, I don't think so. She was afraid of cheese?
She
not
had
allergic to, but afraid of?
Yes, she had a real aversion to raw cheese, as in not melted. Like something about it would trigger.
Let me know when it's a liquid.
When it's like on pizza, she was fine, but when it was just like a slab of cheese or something, it revulsed her to such a degree that she would shirk from it and run from it. And once, when I was being cruel, I chased her through the house with a slice of cheese, and she hid in a closet, locked herself in.
Good Lord. I can't imagine why that relationship didn't work out.
I had to apologize and go, I put it back in the refrigerator.
She's like, "No, burn it. Get it out of this house."
Burn it, then I'll eat it.
Yeah.
Put it on a grilled cheese sandwich and I'll eat it.
That's one of the weirdest quirks I've ever heard for a person.
Yeah, how could I not love her? Anyway,
so let's see. Carmilla sees the guard. She comes in and she's like, "Oh, Emma," and then it's like, "Garlic cross. I gotta go."
Yeah, it is like, yeah. She just dodges her head like, first this, and then this, and that's over there.
Yeah, and then so obviously the next step for Carmilla is, I gotta fucking murder this doctor.
Yep.
The doctor is riding back to where he lives, and his horse gets frightened. He's like, What is it, boy? I don't understand."
I like that too. That's all folklore about horses being afraid of vampires. Like they can sense them, and they very often will not cross graves. That's how they would try to tell who had been turned into a vampire in old cemeteries, is if the horse would not cross one of the graves. They're like, "That's the one.
Get over here, Seabiscuit. Right, we got a test for vampires."
Seabiscuit, Vampire Hunter.
That was the sequel that we all needed. Him and Tobey Maguire going around hunting vampires.
Until Tobey Maguire gets bitten by one and becomes kind of a cool disco dancer guy. Pops his collar, has a big dance sequence. Yeah.
Sam Raimi, Seabiscuit, Vampire Hunter.
Oh my God, I'd watch that.
So the doctor is thrown from the horse, and Carmilla appears, and she goes to attack him, and he does try one desperate move, which is he draws a cross in the dirt.
He starts drawing a cross in the dirt, but it's just too late.
Yeah, well, the wind is picking up, and so it blows it away, and he's like, "Damn!"
She is on him, and she just bites.
Yep, he's donezo. And at this point, Morton has now returned home.
Yeah, Dad finally made it back.
Yes, he's on his way home. I believe, is this where he's on his way home? And no, you're right. We get, for some reason, we get a cut back to the beginning of the movie at this point.
Well, it's because isn't this where? Is it the general has sought out our man from the opening?
No,
Baron.
he has, but he not hasn't yet, has he?
Well, I don't know, but the flashback is when our friend Baron von Hartog is telling the story of what happened.
Well, I sometimes my notes are too vague because I just have Morton returns home, return to opening scene, but then later I have the other return to opening scene. I think we get 2 flashbacks to it.
Interesting, because I don't know who would be flashing back.
Oh, I don't think it's a flashback. I think they're talking about the Karnsteins at this point.
Oh, that's probably it.
I think that's what I mean when I say return to opening scene. They're describing what happened. Later we'll actually get the flashback to it. I think this is is it Renton the butler?
Yeah,
it's him,
maybe so.
and because Morton goes, well, where's the doctor? He said he was going to come back today, and he hasn't. And then Morton goes out to look for the doctor, and that's when he meets up with. Oh, I believe he is told that the general has gone to look for the guy.
Right.
He's told, but we don't see the general yet.
But I think the story of the Karnsteins is being told by the landlord guy. Isn't this the scene where Renton's like going,
yes,
you should listen to this guy?
That's what it is. Renton has the... I missed some... Sometimes I don't write every word down in my notes, and
right.
I should.
The bar owner guy is like, he's the guy who knows about the Karnsteins have terrorized us for so long.
And so Morton's like, the doctor hasn't shown up. I better go look for him.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Carmilla now is going, hey, could you just move those flowers just real quick? And the maid is like, I don't know. They said not to move them. Why, gee, I don't know.
It's pretty good. Not many people know that part was played by Luke Gustav.
Well,
shouldn't I?
He should. Then he moves him. He says, I've been a bad boy. This movie could have used a little Abbott and Costello for my taste.
I
they're
like
the fact that they're lesbians, Lou.
No. There's no such thing as lesbians. It's a myth. A what? A myth. Yes?
Will you stop it?
I like the fact that this movie is, as opposed to some of the ones we've seen recently, is doing everything straight face. Like, this one never leans into, we got to have some stupid doddering somebody for comic relief.
I'm not missing that by any means, but I am missing some of the fun.
Sounds like you are.
Not comedy, but fun of the other movies.
That's true.
This movie's a little stodgy for my taste.
Yeah, it's weird that the one that is being this exploitation-y is also being fairly stodgy.
Basically, where we are in the movie, the exploitation's over. Like, there's no more nudity or sex scenes from here on out.
It's true, but every time Carmilla walks around for the rest of the movie, especially when she's attacking, she's in a transparent nightgown.
Yes.
But you're right. It is no longer about sexy times. It's just about, that's her choice of nightwear.
Yeah. That's just how she is. Get off her back, guys. She's European.
She's European. She can only spell her name so many ways, man.
Look, I have to make this count because I've run out of anagrams at this point.
I love the idea of her sitting with like pads of paper just going, Larry Mackham, Larry Cam.
That's not going to work. No. She just scratched it. No, that's not it. Damn.
Camarilla? No. God
damn it. Yeah, so meanwhile, Morton runs into Carl and the general, and they're like, look over here. Dead doctor. And there's the doctor's body. You want to find that doctor? His throat is torn open right over here.
Yeah, I thought that was, I mean, it's effective because he's like, I need to find the doctor. They're like, oh, don't worry, we've got the doctor with us. He's like, where? And they go right back there. And in the back of the coach, this is what I find hilarious is that they have found this man, this poor man, he's dead. Mm-hmm. So they're taking his body back. Do they cover it with something? No. It is literally like they just tossed him in the back because he's laying there, throat gashed open, blood all over the place, just dead eyes staring. I'm like, that is the cruelest way.
And then
they could have brought this man's body
they're
back.
Like, get in the carriage. Oh, by the way, here's the guy who knows about fighting vampires.
Yep.
And, Cushing has this guy who now has white hair because time has passed.
Yeah. Yeah, the original thing at the beginning of the movie is when she was being, well, I think she was actually Mircalla back then, and it was probably like 40 years before what we're seeing here.
Mm-hmm. And so they're saying we have to head back to the castle where the Karnsteins are buried because and this is where he goes into the flashback, but I do like that he's like, yes, I then meticulously went around and staked every one of them except for one. I couldn't find her, and I was pretty tired at that point, so I thought, well, I got most of them.
I'm like, could you not maybe come back a day later?
Yeah.
You just had the one shot at it?
I like he's like, I know there's another one, but I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah, basically he went around digging up. I like you say, it's a cool concept that there was an entire aristocratic vampire family, but he went tomb to tomb and staked them all and beheaded them, but he couldn't find one tomb. And guess whose tomb? The daughter.
Yes.
Mircalla, Karnstein.
So then we cut back to, while these guys are on their way to the castle, we cut back to the Morton estate, and Carmilla is now asking Renton about removing those flowers, which this is also some of the stuff I'm talking about pacing-wise, when there are 3 separate scenes where people are just attempting to move flowers from a room, and it's like, no, and it's like, damn, I'll try again later. That's the kind of stuff where I'm like, all right, yes, we get it. But here she's like, no, well, and then she says the flowers need to be removed. It was the governess who told me that, and Renton, of course, is like, yes, because the governess is the vampire. I see.
It's weird that Renton makes this jump. I mean, truly, he did test her with the garlic flowers, and she did shirk from them, but he has worked in this home for years.
Yeah.
This governess has been there for a good long while too. My brain might go to, who's the new addition to this household, and when did people start getting sick? I would have said, oh no, it's Carmilla.
I think this guy already had problems with the governess, maybe, and he's like, this explains it all. That's why she wouldn't go out with me.
It could be, because I watched Downton Abbey, and I know how heated this stuff gets. So,
but then Carmilla instead says, yes, stay away from the governess indeed. Why don't you come to my room and these two get down?
This is another thing where it's just like, okay, this guy is about to become a problem. So with that household, she's got Madame Peridot under her thumb. Now she's going to get Renton.
Yeah.
Getting rid of obstacles.
She's running the house.
She's running the house.
Because, yes, of course, he... I think, did she just kill him in this scene? I don't think there's another scene with him.
No, I think he acts
she kills him later. That's right.
Yeah, she kills him later, but he acts as a thrall for a little bit.
Yeah. So then we cut back to, they're now at the castle, and the guy is telling more of the story of the vampires. It's like, anyway, as I was saying... And then this is where they introduce the weird Dorian Gray portrait of Carmilla, which I don't know what the... Number one, it actually doesn't look a whole lot like her. It's not a great portrait.
It bears a resemblance, other than the fact that they decided that when she was alive, she had much more blonde hair.
I mean, that definitely further obfuscates it, where it's like, oh yes, I suppose that's her.
But they don't actually suggest there's anything special about this portrait other than there she is, proof that she was around.
I should say that the portrait will later be... They introduce the portrait that will become a Dorian Gray thing for no reason.
Which I think, for no reason. I think that's just a tack on because they couldn't figure out a nice graphic way to wrap things up. And they went, oh, what if this happened? And it's really dumb and something I hope they regret.
Yes, because then when we cut back now... they show the portrait, and then it cuts to the man in black cackling outside, being like, yes, I don't know what I'm laughing about, but yes.
That is so dead on.
It is just like, once again, I'm like, because I was waiting for, like, when are they going to fight this guy? Oh, they don't. Okay.
They don't.
No,
they don't.
This guy reveals himself as, well, he doesn't reveal himself as anything. He doesn't say anything. But they just cut to him laughing, like, haha, they found that portrait.
Maybe they were anticipating there would be a sequel. Because she just seems like that's it, a loose thread that they could use to launch a sequel.
I guess so. I mean, we'll have to see come sequel. I'm now very curious how much this guy's involved in the sequel.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, then we cut back to Renton is now telling the maid, yes, remember when I said to leave the garlic and the crosses? Get that stuff out of there, actually. Now come to think of
I've changed my mind.
Yeah. And so, yes, now he is the thrall because she gets that stuff out of there. They toss the cross and the garlic. Meanwhile, so much of the climax of this movie is three older gentlemen and Carl searching around for a grave in the studio set of this lawn.
Yeah, this is not
Cushing as a brilliant actor, but even he can't convince me. He's like, it must be around here somewhere.
It really is here.
It's a tiny little movie. Set. There's nowhere to look. Like,
it's just these dudes looking around going, where could that last tomb be? I don't know.
Where could it be now? And they're all, because they can't, like I said, it's such a small studio that they're all just sort of turning in place, looking from left to right. Like,
there are many things, of course, that logic would dictate, and yet they don't follow up on. Here, who isn't thinking to themselves, all right, they've decided that one of the things they have to do is find her tomb, and then they can get rid of her. But one of the other thoughts would be, shouldn't we be protecting Emma?
Nobody brings that up.
Half of them could go back and watch over her, maybe? No, they're all going to stay there. She's fine with the two caretakers that have been turned by the vampire lady and the one maid.
They do eventually send Carl. They do eventually go, Carl, you should check in on the situation.
Yeah, they eventually do. I'm like, shouldn't that have been like first thing?
Yeah, because this is where we cut back to Renton making out with Carmilla, but then she bites him and he dies. So he's out of the picture. Carl's riding heroically back to the house to ultimately still do nothing, kind of.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. And then Morton, we cut back to the castle, and Morton has found the grave, which wasn't hidden at all. It's right there and clearly labeled.
Well, no.
The grave is. The coffin's not in it, though, is what they discover.
Right.
It's pretty out in the open, though, because he's like, look, it's here.
Doesn't Carmilla come back at this point and then go to her grave, and then they find the necklace on top of it, and they're like, here it is.
No, that's when they need to find the coffin in the house.
Oh yeah.
Because the whole thing is they find the grave, but they go, but there's no coffin in it, so they can't.
Right. Yep. Okay.
Because there has to be this confrontation with Carl where she disappears.
Right.
So yeah, now Carmilla is like, that's it. Emma, we're getting out of here now. It's you and me. We're hitting the road. This is 1700s Thelma and Louise, and they're gonna end up driving off a cliff. But don't worry though, because Carl is on his way, and he kicks in the door. But I do like this desperate governess going, "You're taking her? Take me with you too."
Yeah, I mean,
actually,
I do like it, just because, again, it's similar to the stuff we've seen in the other Dracula movies, where Carmilla has used people and also just drained them and killed them. But the whole thing of like, yeah, I totally, slept with you and did my hypnosis thing, but you're just a tool. I don't give a shit about you. It's all about Emma. So it's very pathetic that you got Kate Amara up there going, please take me. I love you. And it's like, yeah.
And she just looks at her like,
I'm gone. I'm gone.
No, I go for the more doe-eyed types. I'm sorry.
I like the really flat acting ones. The ones that just go, I don't know what is happening.
But Carl bursts in with his sword, which he instantly gets knocked out of his hand. And I was like, oh yeah, he's got a sword. Oh, it's down.
But you know what he does have?
He
has a dagger shaped almost exactly like a crucifix.
Especially when he holds it about halfway down the blade.
And starts talking some Latin.
Yeah. And at some point in here, I guess Emma comes around and she's like, oh wait, this is bad. She's just sort of like, Carl, cross, Latin? Oh no.
That again, man, we are doing really well with our impressions.
But that, I mean,
we're both basically Rich Little.
Pretty much. And we all know that all of Rich Little's impressions were winners and dead on. So she is teleported into this castle, or dissolved or bamfed or whatever term you want to use to describe it.
Yeah, it's not like a showy effect. She just disappears. But she leaves behind her necklace.
Yes, because she is teleported into this castle, but through the floor into the secret compartment where her coffin is.
Yeah, so which is what they've been looking for. So when they find that necklace, they're like, "We think we know exactly
it's on top
where
of this."
it is.
And then, lucky for them, they open up the floor, and there's a secret compartment where her coffin is, and she's in it.
Yep.
So they pull it out. They pull her out. She's asleep now, so she can't do anything.
Right.
And they kind of have this whole like, who's gonna stake her? Like, one of us somebody's got to stake her. This bitch has got to be staked.
Ooh, and that is actual language they use.
Yeah,
again,
I was shocked.
1970. I was like,
when
are you serious?
Peter Cushing of all people said that.
This bitch gots to be staked.
This bitch has gots to be staked.
But it is, in fact, our good friend Peter Cushing, and who else should it be? He step up and say,
and he says, "My daughter is dead," and he turns to Morton and says, "Your daughter still has a chance to be saved, so I should be the one to plunge a stake into this bitch's heart." He really went hard on the bitches.
And then he goes, "Where's the heart now? Oh, right, it's here under the rib cage."
This is the lowest I've seen anyone stake anyone in a Hammer movie. It's basically a gut shot.
It is essentially a gut shot, though they do. I don't know why they stretch this out so much, but they do actually show him angling it.
Yeah,
as if he's going to go up under the ribs.
Yeah.
To get to the heart.
That's how you do it. You go under the ribs, into the heart.
Don't do that.
Classic Cushing.
Classic Cushing. But he does stake her, and there's a nice gouting. Is like some blood.
I was happy with the amount of blood that comes out here.
I know you were.
Yeah.
She doesn't wake up. She doesn't do the thing.
Because then he's like, well, I guess that's not quite good enough, though. And he lifts up the top half of her body, whips that head right off.
Yeah, he chops her head off.
Nice.
And then it's a pretty bad fake head. Not as good as the one at the beginning.
We've seen better and we've seen worse fake heads in this.
Yeah.
In these Hammer movies. So yeah. And then they go, great, and we see them that they've put the coffin back in her grave. And then we get our Dorian Gray shot at the end with a portrait of her. The fangs appear, and then it turns to a skeleton, and I'm like, that the portrait was only established 5 minutes ago in this movie.
Right. So to make sure you guys at home follow this is the end of the movie.
Yeah.
The vampire is dispatched very quickly. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's still... we do get a decapitation. We get some blood. That's nice.
As long as we get a decapitation in there, I'm happy.
But it's a sleeping vampire who doesn't have any resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And they stake her, decapitate her.
I think the quietest a vampire has gone out in any of these movies.
Yeah. And then I think there is a quick shot back to Emma waking up and looking like, I'm totally healthy now.
She screams. She wakes up like from a nightmare, but then she's like, oh, wait. What's going on? Yeah, I'm cured of my vampirism.
Right, and Carl is there
and my lesbianism.
Yeah, because I'm totally into the D. That's her last bit of dialogue.
Yeah, which I heard was a Madeline Smith improv because she wants it known she's about as far away from a lesbian as you can get. She's all about that D, baby.
She's like, trust me on this. I'm just putting a little sweetener on this scene.
The women of the audience will know what I'm talking about.
Thank you, Carl. I'm totally into the D.
Carl says, that's good, because I have said D.
I have said D. Man, if you were to walk back to 1970 in a time machine and use this lingo, they would be staring at you.
They'd have no idea what we're talking about.
I'm totally into the D.
The what now?
Do you mean the subway line?
Yeah.
Well, that will get you to Far Rockaway.
If that's where you're going, you should be into it.
Into the D.
Yes.
But, yes, there's that quick cut to image so the audience can feel relieved that not only is she cured, but she likes heterosexual sex now.
Yeah.
And then it's a cut to the painting, which does the stupid dissolve, and it's badly done. The
it's really
painting
bad.
is terrible.
Yeah.
And it's like pretty old no, what was her name? Mircalla.
Yeah.
And then now it's kind of skeletal. Now it's got fangs, and it looks like a fifth grader.
All this does is raise more questions, because now I'm going, wait, the painting had something to do with her vampirism?
It's just symbolism, but it's just dumb symbolism. I don't think it's actually happening.
So
in
now
that world.
I'm leaving this movie with so many questions. What's the deal with the painting? Who's that guy on the horse?
You had no questions. Shut up. You just went done.
I said I need a sequel here. I need a sequel.
Blu-ray off, and you turned on the 20-minute special features of it.
Yeah, and I did, and I said, "Ooh, Madeline Smith, she's a delight."
She is a delight.
She really is. She's very delightful in that 20-minute interview.
It's a weak ending. But what are your feelings overall? Would you recommend to our listeners The Vampire Lovers?
I wouldn't. I would not recommend it. I just think there are so many other vampire movies. I guess it depends on what you're looking for. If you're really looking for period gothic romance, and I use that in the literary sense of romance.
Yes.
Then I guess this will fill that. The same way that I don't enjoy these kinds of stories. I have often been bored by traditional gothic romance stories.
Did you like how romantic Bram Stoker's Dracula is? Because he leans heavily into that.
I do love that movie. But that movie is also batshit insane as well.
Yeah, it's very.
I love that movie, as you're aware, and
we will be talking about it in about a year
when we get to whenever we get to the 90s, because I absolutely love that movie. But that is literary gothic romance, really jazzed up.
Really.
But something I didn't enjoy, even though I think it's very pretty to look at, is Guillermo del Toro's Crimson Peak. Very beautiful looking movie, very boring to me. So some of this may be a personal thing. So I personally wouldn't recommend it to people unless I knew people were into this kind of movie. But this is not, if you love monster movies, you got to see The Vampire Lovers.
No, that's not how I would recommend it either, but I am recommending it. And I recommend it for, I wouldn't say blanketly everybody, but similar to what you're saying, this is a type of vampire movie, and for this type, it's one of the earliest, and you could argue possibly one of the best. As I say, the one that walks the line between full-on sleazy trash and not.
I have no doubt we're getting much sleazier going forward. That I am certain of.
But still, at the same time, it still has the handsome trappings, even with the low budget, of a Hammer production. It has Peter Cushing, and I do like Ingrid Pitt. She's not an amazing actress, but I just love her as a screen presence. And Madeline Smith is adorable and terrible at the same time.
Yes.
So it has.
They're charming, but they don't work for me in the movie itself. They are actually damaging to me and my enjoyment of the movie, even though I find them charming. Like I said, I enjoyed that interview with Madeline Smith more than I enjoyed this movie.
Then you are going to have a hard time with Ute Stinsgaard in the next one, and an even harder time with the Collinson twins.
Yes, at least in the third one, I get Cushing back. He's not in the second one, but Cushing is in the third one as a different character. But
he comes to play.
Because one of the things I am curious about watching these movies, having never seen them, is what kind of continuity there is between them. Are they really a trilogy of films?
Well, it is about the Karnstein family.
Yes.
The twins of evil are not Mircalla, Carmilla, but Ute Stinsgaard in the second one, Lust for a Vampire, is Carmilla.
Yes, I did see in the trivia that they asked Ingrid Pitt to come back for that, and she read the script and said, "This is terrible, and I will not do it."
I love it. I love it. Even she's like going, no.
Even I, Ingrid Pitt, have some standards.
Yeah. But she chose some interesting roles afterwards, and God bless her.
Yes.
Wicker Man, come on.
Fucking Wicker Man, that movie rules. I love the Wicker Man.
Yeah. It's so very good. Surreal.
you talk
I'd say
about
a double feature that should make you uncomfortable is Picnic at Hanging Rock
Oh.
and Wicker Man.
Oh,
If you were to watch those two in a double feature, you would just feel very unsettled.
you're not sleeping that night. That's not going to happen.
That's a great combo.
But I mean, Wicker Man. Come on, you put Edward Woodward and Christopher Lee in a movie, you've got gold. You've got gold right there.
Gold in your hand. Free gold.
Yes. Next week.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what we're doing next week. Well, I'm in a bizarre position here, so I'm trying to find my phone that has the list. Brendan, do you happen to know offhand?
You are literally in a bizarre position.
I am. I'm in an awkward position due to technical difficulties. I've had to move to my bedroom, which is not as well set up for podcasting, and I'm trying to understand where I put my phone. But Brendan, I believe you know what the next movie is. Do you not?
Hold on. I do. We're returning to Frankenstein.
Yes, I know it's a Frankenstein movie, and I believe it is Horror of Frankenstein.
Yes, Horror of Frankenstein is the next one. I couldn't remember which preface.
You know what I like about our show, though, is it's not polished, it's real, you know?
No, man, it's real. We leave all the burps and farts in.
We definitely do, and I've been meaning to talk to you about that. You need to see somebody about your gastrointestinal issues.
Is it because I'm not farting enough, and the listeners have been writing in?
That's what it is. They say Brendan seems to be farting a lot less these days. Something must be wrong with him.
Here's the good and the bad about the movie we'll be watching next week.
I mean, Cushing.
It is Horror of Frankenstein. No, we don't get Cushing.
No, that's right. This is the one without Cushing. So fuck this movie.
This is Ralph Bates as Baron Victor Frankenstein.
Yeesh.
Because
we loved him so much in Taste the Blood of Dracula.
I know. On the possible good side is that we get Kate O'Mara back and Veronica Carlson. They're both going to be.
And I like both of them. I really like Kate O'Mara.
We have Darth Vader himself, David Prowse in it.
Yes.
And this one is directed and written, or at least co-written, by Jimmy Sangster.
Our boy Sangster.
Stepping up to the directorial plate.
He took time off of writing an episode of F Troop to...
There was only so much dialogue I could put in the mouth of Aegon.
Yes, this was after they let me go from Hogan's Heroes because I leaned too much into the horrors of Nazism.
I said, yes, gas chambers were even at the prisoner of war camps.
It's true. I had a whole bit with Hogan in a gas mask. They did not enjoy it.
Oh, my God.
The episode never aired.
So join us next week for Horror of Frankenstein, the next to last of the Frankensteins.
Yes, and the weird outlier of the Frankenstein. So, yes, please join us for that because we need to be doing this for a reason.
You are our reason, listeners.
Yes, we do this for you.
We're doing this. We're taking the hits. But yes, no lesbians as far as I know, but please join us.
Yes.
For
Horror Frankenstein. All right, well, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Campbell and Jones, Meet the Monsters. I'm John Campbell.
I'm Brendan Jones.
And remember, there are such things as monsters.
Eat the hot dog. Don't be the hot dog.